So you're making an app. Now, it might be for your portfolio, or it might be an app that you're looking to release onto the App Store. You're going to need some icons. It's okay. Apple's got you covered with SF symbols. So today we're going to be looking at SF symbols. This is Apple's catalogue of free-to-use icons that we can use in any of our applications, whether you're selling it or putting it as a portfolio project. We are going to specifically be looking at importing them into SwiftUI apps. There's two different ways of working with them, with SwiftUI or UIKit. Unfortunately, I'm sorry for anyone who's using UIKit, because I'm not going to cover that in this video. We're going to specifically look at them in SwiftUI. We're going to try and cover how to bring them in. We're going to cover how to change the weight and size of them. And we're also going to look at some of the functionality of changing colors as well with them and what options are available to you there. There is more to cover because this could go in a lot of different directions. So I'm going to be doing a second video on more things, tips and tricks to do with SF symbols, what options are available to you. So we're going to try and keep it simple to just those categories. And again, just to try and simplify it, because we go in a lot of different places, I'm going to put the timestamps down in the description of size and weight and also the colors, just so you can go specifically to what maybe you're trying to do instead of having to watch all the way through. But if you want to watch all the way through, please do. Initially, let's just have a look at why we would want to use SF symbols in the first place. So why would we want to use SF symbols? Well, logically, we understand. All of us, when we create an app or a game, we want it to be unique. We want it to be different from anything else that somebody else has made before. However, we do have to kind of nod to the acknowledgement that any user that picks up our app is going to have already had years and years worth of experience of using apps. So they're going to expect things to look and be a certain way. For example, you will know for yourself, if you pick up an app that has, and in the top corner there's the three lines, the hamburger menu, well, you expect to tap on that and to get some kind of menu to come up, because that's what we're used to seeing. Same with a cross, we know that's an X. You might see a triangle on its side, a play button, or two lines is pause. All these icons, they're just things we take for granted, but we know what they mean because we've had tons of experience. So when we're using it, SF symbols is a great way to be able to add normal icons that people expect to just flow and feel comfortable within our app, to navigate it comfortably and to feel at home while they're using it. There's also another little thought that we could maybe jump onto as well with this, is that if we want to go in a different direction, we want to use our own icons, we want to create our own UI with these icons, it causes another little dilemma of time and money. Because I don't know about you, but when I've been trying to learn how to code, I'm trying to learn how to code. If we start designing things and going that, you'll start getting into the way of learning graphic design, learning UI, UX, trying to figure out exactly how to design these icons so that everything flows and looks great. Well, that's just going to add more time. It's time you want to be coding or learning to code, whereas you could just be using this standard library. And again, they're still adaptable. We can use them to what we need to. Another way that we could go down to is the money route. So maybe you want to make your own custom ones. You don't have the experience, so you pay a designer to do it, as you would want to. You can't get them to do it for free. They have their own skills that they want to be paid for. So again, this is going to cost money, whereas SF symbols is free. So if you want to go down that route, if you want to learn these things, you want to create your own icons, then feel free. If you want to pay a designer to do it, again, feel free. But this free catalog from Apple, just a great reason just to use it. It adds a real seamless experience because people are used to using them on their apps. So that's just my thoughts on why SF Symbols is such a great platform to use. Okay, so how do we get SF Symbols? Well, if you give it a quick Google, you'll just Google SF Symbols. It's going to take you, top of the list is the developer.apple website. Go straight to that and you'll come to the homepage. Have a little browse down the website. You'll see different features that they're identifying for you that you might be interested in. But on the top right, you've got a download button. So click that, quick little download, and then SF Symbols is all yours to use. So we want to use SF symbols. We've now got SF symbols and downloaded it. Let's actually get to the meat of this and bring in SF symbols into our SwiftUI project. And then we're going to look at how we can modify them as well. So in our Xcode, we've got iPhone 11 simulator running. Nothing spectacular happening in here. It's just a standard setup. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in an SF symbol. Deleting the text, we've got then an image. So these are classed as images. Now, when you open it, we have our options, don't we? Now, they're treated slightly differently. So in that case, we have to use the system name. And you'll see why, because it's got its own functionality that comes with SF symbols. So they are their own unique image type, if you will. So system name is the one that we want. Now we need a string for the title of what this image is called. And this is, if I'm honest, this is the bit that's a little bit more annoying about SF symbols, is that the time-consuming bit is we now have to find which SF symbol we want. And how you do that is if you open SF symbols, you'll see a catalog, just like what I've got up open here. This is all of the SF symbols, okay? Tons of the things, which is great when you want to have a good selection to choose from. But what you'll notice is that you've then got to search them. They've put them in the themes, transport, human nature, editing. So you've got it roughly broken down, but it does take a little bit of time and patience of just searching through and finding which ones you want. And sometimes the key searches they are good, but they come up with different things that you don't necessarily want. For example, I'm searching keyboard. Here's our keyboard icons, which gives us a good selection. Globe, I don't know why that's come up, which is a little bit strange. And then light, min, and max, which would be for a Mac. Again, it's to do with the keyboard, to change the brightness of the backlight, but again, maybe not completely applicable. So I'm sure that the search will always, it will improve, but as you get some patience of just searching through what it is that you're actually looking for, I'm going to just use the play one because it's quite a universal one. And again, you notice there's quite a lot of options that we can use from different styles of the play button. I'm just going to do play.tv because why not? So when you right click on it, we can copy the symbol, we can copy the name, we can copy the image. We want to copy the name. And now going back into Xcode, we can just paste that straight in. And there we have it. There's our play.tv, as tiny as it could possibly be. So we've imported an image. We now want to change its size. So how do we do that? Again, with anything with code, there's several options. Let's go with maybe the most direct way and the way that you would know when it comes to being an image and modifying image sizes is you can do it if you make it resizable. You can just set a frame. Resizable just threw it everywhere across the screen. You could make it 200 by 150, and let's make it center. And there you go. We've got a resized image. Great. Okay, so we can do it that way. Obviously, this sets the size. However, this takes away some of the functionality that SF symbols is so good for. And if we could just talk about this just for a sec. So accessibility obviously is an important thing for Apple. And that will mean that people can change their font sizes and text sizes on their phones, whether depending on how good their eyesight is or whatever the case may be. So SF symbols is built to work along with text to modify depending on the settings of the user's phone. And I'll show you that by doing this. So we can modify the size by actually setting it as, and I know we might not think this initially because it is an image, we can change it by font. And if I could change a system size, let's make it 70. There you go. Works perfectly fine. This wouldn't work with a normal image. SF symbols only works with this. But also as well, then we can change it in a different way. So for example, the font, we've just set that to a standard system of font that's set at 70. But obviously, and I realise this is going to be slightly, we have to zoom in for this, but we can change it to a headline, for example. Let's just zoom in so you can see the difference here, because obviously it's small. So that's set to headline. Maybe it could be a sub-headline. You notice it's just changed. It could be a, let's see what options we've got. Let's pick one. It could be a body. And it's changed again. Do you see? So it's adaptable for the font. And the reason it's adaptable for the font, and what we'll do is we'll set up a, actually, let's put this in a VStack with the simulator going crazy. And let's make some text. And I'm just going to say play and then bring in an image into the font. And it's going to be a system image. And let's just paste in the play.tv. Right, so now we have our play TV. It's a bit pixelated, isn't it? And now we want to change the font to a headline. Do you notice it's changed to fit with the text next to it? Maybe we want to change it to a title. Well, there we go. Again, it's modified it along with the font. And this is the way that it works well. And especially when you're looking at things like tab views and things like that, or buttons, navigation, navigation through your app, it will be good to do it this way, to have a font with your SF symbol with it, and then it's going to change depending on the user's phone, which is a really great functionality because you don't have to scan images all the time and changing them, or it doesn't look right because of the settings that they've got their phone at. So this really does add a great functionality to changing the size and weight of your SF symbol. So all the other customizations that will happen with font are all again the same. So let's change it to a system file there. Just as one last example, 30. Let's change the font to, what would you like to see? Shall we do heavy? And we're just going to keep this as a default. Look at that. It's changed with it. And then this is obviously going to change depending on what we put. If we now made that light or ultra light, again, it's modified it with it. So just impacting again this adaptability that SF symbols, and every single SF symbol works with this. So just a great piece of functionality. Now let's move on to changing the SF symbols colors. So now we want to look at changing the SF symbols colors. To do this, let's just bring this out and try and make it a little bit more obvious what we're doing. If we now just change this, sorry. I'm just going to increase this bigger so that we can see what's going on. So let's make this 100, and we can do the same for this. Okay, so we can see exactly what's happening. Now, changing the styling of our SF symbols, there's a few options, as you can imagine. So let's go over to SF symbols, and you'll notice here on the rendering, and this will show you what the finished product will look like. So we've got multicolor, which is exactly what it says it is. It's multicolor. Then we have a palette, which then sets a palette of colors depending on what we want. So you notice we can change these to change that to blue, can change that to tertiary, and set that to orange, which I'm not too sure. Some of them have the three colors. This one doesn't. These ones up here. So that's a palette. Then we've got hierarchical as well, which basically all that does is you'll notice it changes. This has got a full opacity. This is a lower opacity of the same color. So if we change this to green, for example, you'll notice that's just a lower opacity green. This is high opacity green. And it's the way that it works with this. And I think that gives a unique styling, actually. I actually quite like that. And then you've got the monochrome, which is just one color for the whole icon. So this is the way that we can customize it and look at it. Now, if you change it in here and then try and copy and paste it into it, it's not going to do a thing. It's just going to import the icon standard like we have. But what it does is it shows us the options that we have. What we can then do is if we go back over to Xcode, we can then start modifying it with how we do it. So if you go symbol and symbol rendering mode, you'll then notice what we can change it to. These are the ones that we were just looking at. So hierarchical, monochrome, multicolor, palette. So I'm going to go with hierarchical, actually, just for this one. And you notice that's changed to that. So that's the way that we're going to look different. Which one should we change this one to? So I'm going to say palette. Now we change the color by changing the foreground color. And let's say we're going to change it to red. So there we go, just a palette has just changed the whole thing to red. This one, sorry. If we do the same thing, let's choose red again so you can see the difference. You notice what effect we get because of the hierarchical rendering mode. I hope I'm saying that, I'm pronouncing that correctly. So yeah, the hierarchy of the colors. And again, this changes depending on what you want to do. Blue, for example, there we go. And it's changed it with the font. Perfect. You can also change it with gradients. If you go foreground style, and then go linear gradient, you could then start messing about with this. So then we could say, what should we say? Should we say white? Actually, no, let's go red and blue. Start point, let's make the top leading, shall we? And then we'll make it bottom trailing. And there you go, it's worked through the font and into your symbol, which again, I think gives a cool effect. And obviously you're going to get, I'm just going to demonstrate exactly the same thing in foreground style with the icon on the top. And you'll notice exactly the same, how it affects that as well. And this time we're going to make this orange. Oh, if I spell orange correctly. And green. And let's do top to bottom. And it's not very obvious. Let's change that to blue. You can see that a little bit. There you go. So blue to green. You notice how we're changing that. And obviously as a gradient, you can add in as many colors as you want. Change the styling of it. There we go. 3 colors. We can add this and change this. Again, this works for all of the SF symbols. Another way of using this symbol rendering mode of palette. In the SF symbols, you'll notice you can select multiple colors, and some symbols will use multiple colors. For example, this one, it can use 2 colors that will be different for the play bit and then the outside bit. Experiment with which ones take palette colors well, but I'm just going to show you how to do that because I don't want to miss that out. And it's actually quite simple. You'll notice that we've got the symbol rendering mode as palette. Now we need to change, again, it's not on the color, but on foreground style. Put in which ones you want. So blue, and then do a comma, and then do green, for example. And you'll notice here the palette's being applied. It's going to use, it goes from primary to non-primary, secondary and tertiary, and it goes down the wrist. So for example, if we use, as this is the primary part of the symbol, that started first. If we'd put this the other way round and made it green and blue, you'll notice that the primary one was set to the play button, and then the outside bit has been set to the blue. So that's how you do it with palette. We can always add more colors. Some do take 3 colors. I think there possibly might even be some that take 4. Um, just add them to the list. If you're beyond how many colors that specific icon takes, it's just going to ignore it. There won't be any errors that come up, so just keep an eye out for that. But this red, there's no error coming up, anything like that. It's just simply being ignored because there's only 2 colors that this takes. So just to keep that in mind. So that's the way that we create SF symbols and the way as well that we can apply color to them. So that was a brief introduction to SF symbols. I hope it was clear and simple enough. Didn't explain it in such a backhanded way. Obviously, it shows, hopefully, I've shown the adaptability and the usefulness of using this catalog of icons that we can bring into our apps, especially the accessibility style of making it fit in with font and using that, which is just great. It's so useful for buttons, navigation, and stuff like that, tab views, whatever you're going to be using them on. So hopefully you've found it useful. Play around with it, like with anything with code. You want to import some and change the font and the width and the height and just play around with it. Modify the colors, modify the weight of them. And so just you can see how adaptable and how useful it will or won't be for what you're trying to do in your own projects. So give it a go. Let me know how you get on. Hopefully this was useful. If you did, please let me know. If you find that there was something else that we needed to explain, then please, again, let me know. And I'll add it into the next video because I'm going to do a part 2 on this. Because there's just so much of SF symbols. Specifically next week, I want to look at variants of the icons and how we can modify variants within the code. And also as well, I want to look at Apple approves you to be able to take out the images, these icons, and modify them in vector software. For example, Adobe Illustrator or Sketch, and you can change the icons to something customizable that you want, and then re-import them. And as long as you've done it right, you can then use all the functionality that comes with FS symbols in those custom icons that you've just made off of the standard icons that you just received from their catalog. So hopefully that will be useful as well. So thank you for watching. We'll see you again soon.